Hi, my name is Lucas Gilkey with Hometown Hero, and today I'm here with a very good friend, Kight, one of the leading cannabis attorneys in the entire country. And today we are here to talk about the opposition that the hemp industry is facing and what's coming in 2024. Thank you for joining us. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started and talk about the opposition. After this, we're going to talk about sort of what the ramifications are and what we can do about it. So, Rod, I guess talk about the landscape right now of hemp, what our opposition looks like, what we're coming up against, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. So I want to start, if I can, by talking about where hemp is in a good place first. You know, hemp has not been around for a long time, but yet the industry has grown significantly.
Yeah.
There was a recent report that said that the hemp industry had an economic impact of $28 billion, which is larger than the marijuana industry and is on par with the craft beer industry in the entire United States. And that was done in really just a handful of years. So that's the good news, and that's where we start.
And that was 2022, right? That wasn't even 2023.
That's exactly right. And so with that being said, 2024, we're filming now in January of 2024, is a consequential year. It may even be an existential year, because despite that, we face significant opposition. And there are various sectors of the industry and generally in the United States that are opposed to the direction that hemp is taking. And so let's talk about that. I think, you know, the number one, besides prohibitionists, and of course there are people that don't believe that cannabis should be legal, that people should be able to consume it. That's always been the case, and I'm happy to talk about that. But I think really our big opponent right now, unfortunately, is the marijuana industry itself. It's all cannabis, to be clear.
It's all the same plant. Hemp and marijuana in nature are the exact same plant. Cannabis sativa, L, with the L being that very long word that nobody
Right.
ever says, and it's always referenced as just
right.
L.
Even in the statute, it's a period after L,
Yeah.
right? But right, it's all cannabis. But legally, we have marijuana and we have hemp. Marijuana is illegal under federal law and the laws of some states. And then we have hemp, which is legal under federal law and legal under the laws of all states in some way, shape, or form. And the sole distinction is the difference or the amount of concentrations of delta-9 THC. That's it. That's
on the
sole
dry weight
metric.
basis.
On a dry weight basis,
Yep.
exactly. So there are prohibitionists, but the big issue is the pushback we're seeing from what I call big marijuana, because there are small, in some states, marijuana operators. We're getting calls of operators who are pivoting to hemp, opening up to hemp, but by and large our opposition is with the multi-state operators, what we call MSOs, who are corporate. Some of them are internationally corporate, multinational, you know, and they're coming in and they have a monopoly in the states in which they operate. They're one of 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 operators in entire states, and very often they're vertically integrated, which means that they control production, the cultivation of the product, the processing of it, the manufacturing of it, the distribution of it, the retail, the branding, everything. And so you think an entire state, its whole cannabis industry is controlled by, you know, a very small handful of MSOs. Those companies don't like what hemp is doing. They don't like the success that hemp has because it's threatening their bottom line. You know, obviously they're pro-cannabis, but they're not. But they're opposed to companies in the hemp space that are competing with them and their products.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've actually taken the stance that I consider the people in marijuana that don't like hemp and that are actively trying to get rid of it as prohibitionists.
They are prohibitionists.
It's highly hypocritical to me, and it's lost sort of the passion around cannabis that we've seen over the years with Jack Herrera and, you know, all these people that have come before us that have worked so hard to get cannabis to where it is, and then now you've got sections of the marijuana industry that are literally going for a prohibitionist stance against hemp, which is, it hurts my brain to think about that.
It hurts my brain too. It is prohibitionist. I mean, it's by definition, they're wanting to prohibit the expansion of cannabis into the zones where they're operating, you know, certain states essentially. And so that's prohibitionist. And if you believe in cannabis as a plant, well then you believe in hemp, and you should believe in the expansion of access to it. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's hard to overcomplicate it, right?
And just so everybody is clear, if you are watching this and you're in the marijuana industry, we do not want to fight the marijuana industry. We don't want to harm the marijuana industry. We're trying to make it clear that the marijuana industry and all of the people and all the companies and all the businesses in the marijuana industry have the ability to do hemp as well. And this is a very, very important distinction that a lot of people are missing. The two industries should not be fighting against each other. The two industries should be working together. We all want the same goal. And so I think we're reaching sort of this pivotal point where we're now seeing a lot of these marijuana companies come into hemp. And they are being smart, and they are realizing that they don't have to choose one or the other. They can do both. And marijuana right now, unfortunately, overregulated, overtaxed. We've covered this numerous times in multiple videos. The industry is struggling because of the landscape that was created from the regulatory standpoint. Hemp is much more free in what we are able to do and how we can do it.
That's exactly right. I think hemp gets a lot of the blame for why the marijuana industry is not doing well, but competition is good, right? We're in the United States. We value economic competition. What's happening is they're being overtaxed, they're being overregulated. Why do we have seed to sale? We don't have barley to beer. Why is that even necessary? And so that and they can't cross state lines. There's all sorts of barriers that are in place, unfortunately, because the marijuana industry put those barriers in place. And it's a lot of it's just historical. Before cannabis was sort of more broadly available and understood like it is now, the marijuana industry said, well, we want to be able to sell and have a regulated market. Great. And so they pretty much sort of acceded and accepted all of these onerous regulations. Sure, we'll take it. Just let us sell it. Just
whatever it takes.
Overtaxation. And now they find themselves shackled by those very regulations that they were willing to accept or couldn't defeat in order to move forward. And that's a shame. But how often in an industry, and if we're talking about the cannabis industry at large here, but in an industry, do you get to push reset? That never happens, but we have an opportunity right now. And that reset is, hey, the marijuana industry is struggling, but the hemp industry is expanding.
Yeah.
Marijuana companies, hey, come join us.
Yes.
You don't have to fight us. You don't have to go and spend millions of dollars lobbying to shut down hemp and to overregulate hemp just so that you can sort of maintain your little tiny corner that you've painted yourself into, this dysfunctional structure of marijuana regulation. No, you can expand into hemp and participate and help to continue to promote cannabis to...
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think the hemp industry has kind of rolled out the red carpet. Anybody in marijuana that wants to join hemp, there is no barrier. Come join us.
Give me a call.
Open
right?
invite.
Right. And to that, we are seeing smart people who are beginning to understand it. And I think a lot of it, weirdly, because it's all cannabis, is a bit of a cultural piece too. The hemp and marijuana industries have sort of grown up in parallel, and historically there hasn't been a lot of overlap. And so what we see when I get calls from people that have been in marijuana is either they've already had a shift and they recognize what we're talking about, and they're like, oh my gosh, it was a big thing and none of my friends and colleagues are seeing it, but we saw this we had this aha moment, and that's why we're calling you. So we see that, but we also see people who are like, I just was told to call you and I just don't get it. Like a lot of times they don't get it. And so it's
complex.
It is, and it's a bit of an educational piece, and it's a paradigm shift. I think that we thought, we being just Americans, that cannabis legalization would look a certain way.
Yeah.
And the way that became that was sort of the state by state regulated markets where it stayed illegal federally, but blah blah blah. And that was the pattern, and you still, even to this day, I've been reading articles on predictions for 2024. You have all of these mainstream cannabis and even non-cannabis articles talking about what's the next state that's going to legalize. Okay, well, that's what they pictured it as being, but guess what? We already have cannabis legalization in the form of hemp. Like, you just open your eyes and look around. It's here, and we didn't expect it to be that way. But this is the way that it's happening, and it's growing, and I think it's a really good thing. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're finally, 2024, my hope for this year is that the marijuana industry finally, at least a good portion of the marijuana industry starts to understand that we're here as an ally, not as an enemy. And that's a very, very important distinction. And the more people that we reach in marijuana, the more people that we talk to, the more people that we explain what this industry is and how it came to be, even with Jack Herrera back to the HIA in like 1984, like people don't realize there is some intertwining in these two industries that go pretty far back in the roots. And so I think it's really important, my true hope and desire for this year is that the marijuana industry, if you're watching and you're in marijuana, we're here to help. Like we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat, and we're not trying to be contentious and pick fights. But there are stuff that's coming out of the marijuana industry from different groups, which we'll talk about, that are attacking us and attacking the hemp industry. And we will defend ourselves if we have to, but we aren't actively looking to harm marijuana in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's a response. The hemp industry is ready, willing, able, and actually responding to the threats that are being posed, whether they be lawsuits or lobbying and regulations. And one point that I want to bring out here as we're sort of maybe wrapping up this section of our talk about the marijuana industry is, the world, the international community is beginning to come online with cannabis. We have countries in South America, in
Australia,
Europe, in Southeast Asia, Australia that are coming online. The United States has arguably the deepest history with cannabis in terms of a market and research and development and so on and so forth. We have a lot to offer, and it's a big world out there. The marijuana industry cannot, by law, participate. The marijuana industry can't even cross state lines, much less international lines.
Correct.
Guess what? Hemp can. And so,
Yep.
do we want to be able to be the suppliers for Germany is likely to legalize. Germany is the biggest country in Europe. Brazil is legalizing right now. Thailand just had a bizarre sort of a legalization situation. Australia, so on and so forth. Well, the hemp industry can participate in that world market right now, and as it expands, why are we going to shackle the United States cannabis industry in a marijuana box when we can participate in the world? So anyway, I think that's a huge piece that people are overlooking.
Yeah, that's awesome.